Why did North Korea collapse so dramatically and have this terrible famine after the collapse of the Soviet Union? What was the was it giving them below market rate energy, or what was happening that stopped and caused this?
Well, I think it's something that none of the experts fully understand. But as I understand it, you had the collapse of the energy regime in the early 90s after the Soviets began charging world prices for oil and other commodities that they sell to North Korea. This then affected their industry and agriculture. The industry didn't have fuel, but they also, believe it or not, North Korea had one of the highest rates in the world of putting chemical fertilizer on their fields. I first went to North Korea in 1981, having been in the Peace Corps in South Korea and lived there, done a lot of research there. And one of the things that amazed me was that the rice fields didn't reek of what we might call manure, only it's human manure. In South Korea, they were still collecting excrement and dumping it on the fields as a fertilizer. And you haven't smelled anything until you've smelled a rice paddy that's just had that dumped on it. During the war, soldiers complained about it all the time. When I went to North Korea in '81, I stood in a rice paddy and it didn't stink. And I said, you don't use, human manure? He said, no, we have a very large chemical industry. We've been putting chemical fertilizer on the fields for a very long time. And it turned out when the World Agricultural Association got into North Korea in the 80s, they validated that North Korea had a very high rate of chemical fertilizer. So when you take that away, there goes their rice crop because the chemical factories weren't functioning. Their tractors and rice transplanting machines weren't functioning because of a lack of fuel. And then that cascaded through the economy so that an industrial city like Cheongjin essentially looks like Detroit. Not only are the factories not working, but they've been cannibalized by people in search of anything to sell on the black markets that exist and have existed since the famine. So their only hope is really to work with South Korea and other countries to rebuild their economic infrastructure. And that's what's going on, for example, in the Kaesong export zone that's employing about 40,000 North Koreans. It's all South Korean technology now.
Well, would it be accurate to say that the South Koreans, to some extent, are deliberately trying to help North Korea get back on its feet economically?
They certainly were for 10 years, from 1998 to 2008, when the Nobel Peace Prize winner Kim Dae-jung was president, and then his hand-picked successor was elected for a 5-year term. South Korean presidents only get one 5-year term. During that 10-year period, a great deal of aid and equipment, technology went to the north. That's when this Kaesong export zone was set up. There were going to be more of them if that particular party in the South had held on to the presidency, which they didn't. So since 2008, with the opposition in a much more conservative president, there's not much rebuilding or actually a lot of backpedaling regarding the North Korean economy. But I will say that I thought South Korean firms were very smart 10 years ago and even before. They were slowly but surely taking pieces of the North Korean economy and rebuilding the infrastructure, putting in the latest technologies, putting in whole factories to rebuild North Korea bit by bit, rather than try to absorb North Korea the way West Germany absorbed East Germany, which was extremely expensive and even today still difficult. So I thought that was a very wise strategy. Kim Dae-jung said, reconciliation will take another generation before unification. And so you would have had, if there had been that continuity, 30 years, 25 or 30 years of piece by piece rebuilding the North Korean economy.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.